Landowners and hunters spend a lot of money every year on putting out feed for all different species of wildlife. Um, they buy feeds like this here, which is corn. They put out, this one's even persimmon flavored corn. People buy deer cocaine. They buy all sorts of feed supplements, bigger antlers and bigger animals, bigger birds or whatever. But a lot of money spent annually on buying these type of food plot feeds, or they put it out in piles, or they scatter it through the woods to attract wildlife. And all it does is concentrate wildlife for a short period of time. It's really not that lasting. Well, I would say this was ephemeral, which means it doesn't last for a very long time. So with that said, I want to encourage landowners to concentrate more on the native food that's here, that feeds our animals year round. We have lots of it. And the term I want to discuss this morning is called Mast, M-A-S-T. Professional wildlife biologists and foresters, they use the term mast. Probably unfamiliar word with most of you. You think mast is a mast of a ship or something, but mast means the fruit of woody plants. It can be lots of different things. And it's broken down into two categories, hard mast and soft mast. So let's start with hard mast. Hard mast generally comes from our big woody tree species. Oaks and hickories are some of the predominant ones we're familiar with. Hard mast, of course, hard being it is hard. Here's some examples of them. The oak species are probably the most productive of the hard mast species. There's red oaks and there's white oaks. Both produce acorns of different types. The smaller ones generally are the red oaks. The white oaks produce the bigger ones, and the biggest one that I know of is the bur oak or the sawtooth oak, another one, often planted for turkey and deer because it produces such a large acorn, like a nest there. Anyway, we'll talk about the red oaks first. Red oaks are higher in protein, higher in fiber than the white oaks. Red oak acorns germinate in the spring, whereas the white oaks germinate in the fall. So shortly after the white oak acorn falls to the ground, it germinates. So the white oaks are here just for a short period of time. They also are a little sweeter than the red oaks. They have less tannin in them. Tannin is a product that's a little bitter. You can taste it. The red oaks have more tannin in them, therefore not the most desirable in the beginning of the fall. So the deer and other animals will go to white oak first because they just taste sweeter and also very nutritious too. So because the white oaks germinate shortly after they fall to the ground, they get gobbled up first. Red oaks play a very important part in animal nutrition and survival because they lay there all winter long waiting to germinate in the spring. So therefore, at the end of winter, when food supplies are at their lowest, the animals are probably most likely in their worst condition, nutrition-wise. They depend on the red oaks. So it's very important as a landowner to have a mix of both, to manage both your red oaks and white oaks. And we'll talk about how to manage those in a later video. But these trees that produce the hard acorns, what we call the hard mast, they're more than just the oaks. Here's an example of a hickory. You'll have them. There's 2 or 3 different species or more of hickories found. Of course, a squirrel split this one open. Here's a little red oaks. Here are some dried buckeyes. The buckeyes develop in the spring, flower in the spring, and produce a fruit later on in the fall of the year. Another example of hard mast. And of course, I think we're all familiar with the pecans. We find them sometimes planted in orchards or yards or ones that escape in the forest. But these are the hard masts. Next, we're going to move to soft mast. And of course, as the word implies, soft mast is soft, just like persimmon. It's a soft, fleshy fruit. As I said earlier in the video, 20 species of animals depend on this fall fruit. In the fall and the winter of the year, you'll also see the eastern red cedar. These little blue berry-like structures are actually cones covered in a waxy surface. Several species of birds, cedar waxwings and robins, will eat these during the winter. We often don't think about that, but this is the female eastern red cedar. They are a separate sex plant also, like the persimmon. Red cedar furnishes it. The quintessential soft mass in the woods is probably the American holly. We use this at Christmas and seasons, but this too is a separate sex plant. The American holly grows well in light shade and also in full sun. It takes several years to produce fruit, but a very highly desirable soft mass species in the forest. There are lots of them out there. Now we also have other hollies that we plant as ornamentals in our yard. These ornamental hollies like Nellie Stevens, this is Emily Bruner, there's Red Robin. They can produce berries without the male partner. It's called parthenogenic fruit, very showy. That's why they're in the landscape trade. So if you want to have more bird activity in the wintertime, you can certainly plant these ornamental hollies. The downside to ornamental hollies like this one, they don't like shade, whereas the American holly that I just showed you does well in the shade. Other soft mass sources of food that we'll find in the forest throughout the year, we have blueberries. We grow native blueberries here in our eastern forests of North Carolina and the Piedmont and the mountains. We have the fox grapes, the muscadine grapes that appear in late summer and fall. And of course we have blackberries, dewberries, and raspberries that grow wild in our forests and along roadsides and along the edges of the field. So all these are consumed by, a whole host of different mammals and bird species, insects too. So anything that's soft and produces fruit is soft mast. I encourage you as a landowner to learn more about the native foods that we have in our forests. They provide food from spring all the way to late winter, and you should manage those, protect them from being destroyed as best you can. A lot of things we think of as weeds, we need to cut them down, we need to spray them with Roundup or some other broadleaf herbicide when we realize if they're fruit producing or nut producing, that is valuable to some species of animal, butterflies, insects, they all have value, even poison ivy. I often don't look at that when I'm in the woods as being a beneficial plant, but it does produce a beneficial berry, which is consumed by birds. So most all plants have some value to some species. Identify them, protect them, save some of them from destruction, because they feed these animals year-round and provide an important part of their nutritional needs throughout the year. How do you learn these plants? Some of the texts that I used in college, I still keep today. One I had here was the American Wildlife and Plants Guide to Wildlife Food Habits. This tells me what almost every species of animal eats, and it also goes into the foods and what animals eat that food. Written by Herbert Zim. He's very well known for some of the Nature Guide series from long ago, but an excellent book learning about, what animals actually eat, what part of their diet. Another one that's really great with color pictures in it is Forest Plants of the Southeast and Their Wildlife Uses by James Miller, produced by the Southern Weed Society. But it does show you the plants and what value they have for wildlife. It is an excellent book with color photos and tells you what species of animals it eats. NC State Extension Service publishes a really nice little publication, Landscaping for Wildlife with Native Plants in Your Backyard or your front yard or your side yard. Lists these native plants and what species of animals like them. The Audubon Society also publishes some great publications on bird-friendly plants, native plants that are good to use in your home landscape. So there's some good authoritative resources out there that you can use to design not only protect your forest or enhance your forest for wildlife, other than just using seasonal foods, and also what you can do in your own backyard. Now there's going to be one plant that I'm going to bring up that is my wife's favorite at Christmas time, and it's the Nandina. Nandina produces a lot of beautiful red berries, and they're used for Christmas decorations. However, this is an invasive plant, and the berries are poisonous to birds. You wonder why the berries are still there in the spring in the summer and in the fall because they don't want to eat them. They contain cyanide, and the only time they'll consume them if they're starving. And there's many cases of birds die off because they ate the nandina berry. An invasive plant, and I would say not a wildlife friendly one for sure. So it's mixed blessings on using some of this as thinking you're doing a good job attracting wildlife. Nandina is not it. But we have so many other native plants here that you can choose from, and I hope you take time to learn about them and protect them. It is good for all of nature to do that. So I'm Rhett Davis with the North Carolina Tree Farm Program.